Hello ladies and gentlemen, I am BorderWise and welcome to From the Depths, a basic plane tutorial. Because it's high time I made one of these, because plane building is one of those things in From the Depths that almost everyone wants to do at some point, but is kind of difficult. And so here we are. And while we're watching this plane I built, Ruin the Marauder's Day, multiple disclaimers. Firstly, I am not an expert on building planes. They do exist in From the Depths. Some people just gravitate towards building planes in this game, and other people like me gravitate towards building something else, like canoes, or things that act like planes and fly but are not actually planes at all. Because they don't act like planes. I just contradicted myself. And, yeah, so the most important disclaimer is that this video you are watching right now is not a guide on how to build a perfect plane. It's not even necessarily a guide on how to build a good plane. It's just some handy tips that I've learned the hard way, and how to make a functional plane, as in the thing will actually do something similar to what you actually want it to do. Okay, so with that out of the way, let's start off by hopping on this fella. This is a plane I made recently and shared over the social media because I was so proud of it. Also, another disclaimer, we're in beta test, just so I can show off a few new things that have been added to the game that aren't in the stable branch right yet. Okay. If you're watching this much later than the date on the video upload, you can ignore that bit, because probably what I'm about to show you is in the stable branch and the game itself anyway. So what is this thing? This is a plane. This is a plane which I made, and it's the first decent one I think I've ever made in my life. And first thing on the agenda is why plane? Why would you build a plane? I've wondered this often to myself as I failed to make a good plane. And yeah, so firstly, like, well, for one thing, like, I, for the longest time, thought that building planes was pretty useless because, oh, you want to fly at your target in a nice, predictable straight line, get close to them, so they can shoot you in the face. Right, cool, that's a great idea, let's not do that. And, that was due to my inexperience with building planes and my relatively greater experience in building other things. But there's good reasons to build planes in From the Depths, and the big one overall is just efficiency. So, an aircraft, as in something that can use ailerons to roll, and what's the word for it? Just I'm just gonna call them airfoils. I know they're not called that. Basically, airfoils to yaw and adjust the pitch, is potentially faster and cheaper than other flying alternatives such as thrustercraft and airships. The reason for that is that planes, particularly anything using an AI routine, well, using the right AI behaviors and routines, they can adjust their pitch and their roll without using any power, because they don't need to use thrusters to do that. They can just use these things. So if we zoom it out here, you see we've got ailerons right over here, controlling the things for roll. And you've got this thing over here, which is an aero elevator, tailplanes, aero rudders, blah blah blah. And here's some aero rudders up here. Weird tail on this thing, I've got to admit. So basically, yeah, these are like, these are the airborne equivalent of rudders for ships. They exert quite a huge amount of force, and they cost you nothing, and they're also very cheap. So already, like, you've got the initial building cost of this thing down, and you've also got the running cost down, because unlike, say, an airship or like a thrustercraft, it can dramatically change pitch and roll without using power. They also can use roll to turn, so, you know, just the kind of banking turn that planes are, well, known for. And they can use pitch to adjust their altitude. That's one of their main advantages over anything else. They don't need a thruster pointing down to, like, forcibly push them straight up. They can just basically steer upwards, and up they go. And what this means is that, as you can see by looking at this thing, it's moving up and down, it's very evasive. It's moving erratically and fast, and it's, as a result, this thing is very maneuverable and very dodgy, in the good way, basically for free. It's not costing any power to do that, it's not costing a lot of extra materials, because, as we just saw, aero elevators and aerolons, they're very cheap and don't require power, so that's the main advantage of using a plane. You can do a lot more with a lot less, and so if you want to make a small, fast airborne thing, a plane is actually the better way to go. They're very power to volume efficient in that way. Right, so now I've established why we'd want to make a plane, let's go over some handy tips while we watch this guy fly around and blow up another marauder, because that's fun. And actually, I believe I can hold still, please. Hold still. I want to look at you. I want to look at you. Yep, and that'll do nicely. We're now following him quite nicely. Alright, so there's a few handy tips. I'm going to read out here, and I'm also going to read them out. And also, not read them out, I'm going to read them out and also put them on screen for your viewing pleasure. The most important thing in ascending order for a plane is thrust, roll, and pitch. Pitch control is pretty much the most important thing for making a decent aircraft, because it means the thing can control not only the angle it's pointing up and down, but also its altitude, so that's really important. And roll is important if you want to do those kind of banking turns. You need to get not just the right amount of roll control surfaces, be they thrusters or aerolons or something like that, but also in the AI for maneuver, whether you pick airplane or aerial maneuver, there's two of them, is these settings right here. Maximum roll, banking turns, gradual roll degrees, blah blah blah. You need to get that right, and that can be quite fiddly. I tend to just, like in the planes I've been experimenting, including this one, I barely touch it. It's just, that's another handy hint for your first plane. The default AI settings are actually pretty decent. Do not touch them unless you have to. Otherwise you will break it, probably. So yeah, that's an important thing to note. And yes, thrust. So, the thrust of a plane, this one is a little bit weird because the main jets are on the side in the wings. It's actually not that weird, really. But if you do this, and if you hit... Ah, darn it, I don't know what... It's the thing just below the backspace key. I forget what it's called. Slash. Do this. You will notice the red line, the drag, or rather the grey line here. Red letters is all that. And it's very important to line up your propulsion with that line, because if it's set too low, your craft will go into space or endlessly do loop-de-loops, and if it's too high, your craft is going to pitch down straight into the ground, because it'll be pushed more... the main thrust will push it up or down, so you've got to align that correctly. Okay, and you'll notice that I'm talking about pitch and roll and thrust and all that stuff. There's an important thing, well, there's a seemingly important thing I have not mentioned, and that is wings. Now, those of you who live in the real world, which is probably all of you, might be thinking something along the lines of, hang on, wings. Planes have wings, right? They're an essential part of the whole arrangement. Wrong! They are not. From the Depths does not care about your real-life logic. This is game logic we're talking about. And wings and From the Depths are a bit of a trap, because in particular, like a lot of the planes I made in the day, I've made a lot of failures, by the way. Hopefully in watching this you can avoid some of my grief, is that putting too much wings on a plane is very, very bad. The reason being is that wings are very, very strong in From the Depths, and the gravity is very weak. So if you put too many wings on a plane, it'll fly too high. It'll just be like, it won't be able to control its altitude very well. And wings have a lot of drag on them, so they actually slow your plane down, which means the way I would recommend building a plane is kind of add the wings last. It's just you add the thrust, you add the pitch control, you add the roll control, you add all that stuff and everything you want to the plane, And only then, if it's struggling to gain altitude, do you stick some wings in odd places, just aligned with the center of mass on the sides. Like, because that way, the thing will be able to control its altitude like more readily and it won't fly too high. Okay, so that's important. And speaking of important things, this is all kind of important really, and plane, in order to be useful, I find, must be either very fast or have very erratic movement, preferably both. Because, like what I said before, if your plane flies in nice, predictable straight lines, it will get shot straight out of the air, even by things that should not be able to hit it, which is really annoying. That's a chunky thing I want to shoot at. Prowler, that'll do. So yeah, it's just this bobbing and weaving that this thing, which is called the Diamond Wasp, by the way. A lot of good name suggestions for this thing, but Diamond Wasp is a combination of two of the best ones. That thing just got hit. That's really annoying. Still flying though, that's nice. But also, this is definitely not a fair fight. Not the Plunderer, what's it called? The Prowler can barely hit us. But yeah, so it's moving up and down a lot. It's got this kind of sine wave motion going. Because this was a real eye-opener for me with making planes, is that curving movement in front of the depths is very, very good for evasive movement, because the AI can only lead its shots and predict movement in straight lines. It's been like that for a very long time. There's pretty much no other easy way to code how the AI aims at stuff. So anything that moves in a curve, be it a yawing curve, so it's like curving as it's turning, or in a pitch curve, as what you're seeing here with the Diamond Wasp, is kind of doing this sine wave up and down motion, which is really throwing off the targeting of pretty much everything that's of like any form of kinetic weapon aimed at it, which includes missiles, by the way, because, you know, kinetic damage, it is a kinetic thing. It is a solid thing that moves. And, yeah, preferably both. This thing is going at about 90 meters per second, spiking up to 100 occasionally, and that varying speed is actually also pretty good, because it's screwing with the enemy's ability to predict where it's going to be, because it keeps changing speed. And yeah, that's important to note, is that your plane must be fast. Slow plane is a dead plane, and preferably also evasive as well, and get lots of curving movement in there in order to actually dodge stuff. Because something this small is not tanky, it just isn't. You also notice it's hitting itself with its own missiles. That is an unfortunate consequence of being so bouncy, so plan for that. And speaking of defense, missile defense is essential. Even if you have a ridiculously fast plane, it's a good idea to have some kind of missile defense on it, because missiles can catch you. The speed limit for missiles is a lot more generous than it is for any form of functional craft in From the Depths, so you do need missile defense. And the best missile defense for planes is either an ACB-controlled countermeasure dropper. So if we go here, and I just have something like this. Hopefully this doesn't absolutely ruin the thingy on it. So something like this. I'll probably have to make a different video on missile defense. So something like this. Something that fires a missile like this, with sticky flares and radar target simulators on it, just to pull enemy missiles away from you, is very, very handy on planes. Or, if you really want to be clever, you can use these. So these are decoys. This is a radar decoy, what we got here, and it uses power, or engine power, in order to generate a kind of a fake signal that pulls missiles towards itself, a specific point in the graph. And these are on the end here, because that screws with missiles that try and lead the target. So if they've got APN guidance or target prediction guidance, they will go for the tail of the craft, and this is a very small target. These are like two separate tiny blocks, which I believe are actually quite tanky. They're not that tanky. But yeah, they're hard to hit, and this thing is a lot more missile resistant than it would be otherwise, which is very, very handy. And speaking of missiles, you'll notice this thing is armed with missiles, quite a lot of them. For your first plane, or your first 10 to 100 planes really, I really do recommend using missiles rather than anything else on a plane. Simply because they're a lot simpler, and if you have a fire and forget missile, it's just a lot easier to reconcile that with the evasive movement of your aircraft. Because the way this thing is jiggling up and down right now, it's kind of difficult to get accurate gunfire, or even laser fire, off this thing. So, unless you've got a very stable flying platform to mount a gun on, you're probably better off not mounting a gun on it, frankly. Like, aircraft armed with advanced cannons, or cram cannons, or anything like that, are pretty difficult to make effectively. You can do them, there's goodness knows there's plenty of examples, but I recommend not trying that until you've gotten pretty good at making a stable plane, which, as you can see, I have not quite yet managed. I have made a thing that does do that. It's mainly just for giggles. It's basically, it's the Diamond Wasp, but it's got a different paint job, and it's firing bullets. So let's go here. So these guns are on turrets, simply because that makes it a hell of a lot easier for the thing to aim. This thing is way, way cheaper than the actual Diamond Wasp, but it does almost no damage, simply because this thing is so small, it's difficult to mount cannons on it that do any decent kind of damage. Like, it is possible, it's just not that easy. So I recommend try building a missile plane first, get that right, and then move on to guns. And also, direct fire weapons, like these simple cannons, they require a decent detection in order to do a good job. So you'll notice there's a camera, there's active radar and laser rangefinders mounted here, which means you're gonna need more room in the plane for general purpose processing power for your detection systems to actually do a good job. But yeah, it's like, it's the compromise. You can make a cheap thing with lots of room for GPP, or you can make something like this with less GPP, but it needs more ammunition, and it is a lot more expensive. Like, this is 17,000, and the gun arm variant is about 5,500, so also depends on your budget, really. So yeah, but really, missiles are better for planes. Like, they just are. Especially if you can make decent missiles. Okay. Right, and speaking of weaponry, you'll notice that while we're looking around here, the Diamondback proper, the thing armed with missiles, is flying a bit higher than the gun-toting variant down there. Your altitude of your plane relates directly to what kind of weapons you want to stick on it. So, if you've got missiles, you can afford to fly pretty high, because the missiles can hopefully steer themselves towards the target, that you don't need to be close in order to ensure a hit. If you're armed with something like this, particularly these things which have fire reasonably slow projectiles, you need to get pretty close in order to do the job, which is very risky. The lower you fly, the more likely you are to get shot, so you have to kind of decide whether it's worth it. In this case, it's probably not. It is probably not. This was a thing I made for giggles. But I can't say giggles. So yeah. And preferably you want to fly as high as possible, because the further away you are from your enemy, the more they need to lead the target in order to hit you if they're not using guided weaponry or hit scan weaponry. So more altitude is better. In fact, my favorite things are like almost low orbit craft. And the ground attack plane thing just got hit by an EMP, because friendly fire is important. It's also a good idea, if you're going to use multiple planes, have them fly at different altitudes, and try not to have them fly directly into each other's field of fire, because that's a bad thing. They shoot each other, and that's bad. Okay, so on that notice of things getting damaged, if you're going to build a plane, I would recommend not bothering armoring it that much. Like, alloy Alloy is actually a very good substance to use for aircraft, simply because it's so light and it is reasonably tough. You should not need more armor than this. It's tempting to make a flying brick, but yeah, it's just I would recommend against that, because if you want a flying thing that is like really tanky, that is what airships are for. Like, really, if you want... a plane is not good at that kind of thing. So yeah, it's like, these things have basically no armor at all, and they rely entirely on active defenses, missile countermeasures, being fast and being evasive, and honestly, that's what planes are best at, and they do that better than pretty much any other kind of craft. Except possibly for front-siding airships, because they can bob up and down and side strafe and do all that wacky stuff. So yeah, that's the thing to remember. Is gosh darn it, we just got EMP'd again. Yeah, so also laser defense. Lasers are pretty much the hard counter to small, fast planes like this. I would not even bother trying to laser-proof these guys, because it's just not worth it, because you either need energy shields, which require a lot of power, which is power that could instead be used to make your thing fly faster, and just have better missile countermeasures, or just or it requires smoke, which doesn't work so well with fast things because it leaves the smoke behind. So don't use these things against things with lasers, and I will demonstrate that right now. Assuming this thing actually fires at me. Ah, I think we killed it. Let's spawn in a few more. I think it has a limited arc of fire, which is, sucks to be you, actually. Hang on a minute. Yeah, so this is why you do not want to use small planes against lasers. That's a bad thing. These are short-range lasers, so you can kind of stay out of their reach, but, this is, because evasiveness and speed does not work against lasers at all, I wouldn't even bother. Like, a laser shield or anything else would not help this little fella right there. Don't bother. Just don't bother at all. It's sheer dumb luck that this, that the Diamond Wasp has actually managed to stay out of the reach of these things completely. Which is hilarious, actually. I didn't plan that, but the Volta is quite a weak laser craft. But anyway, so, yeah, and last but not least, one of the most important things about planes is that you must embrace the magic that is custom jets, which is what this thing here is using to fly. These are small custom jets, and they are fantastic, because they don't need an engine, so you don't need to dedicate weight and space in your plane itself in order to produce power to fuel, like, just the simple jets, like these things over here. If you do want to make a spacecraft, unfortunately ion thrusters are the way to go. And it's just, they're so powerful. Like, this thing is still pretty cheap, but it's going, like, almost 100 meters per second with not a huge amount of effort. And if you don't know how to make a custom jet, the layout is very helpful. You start here, and you place going that way. Intakes at the front, exhausts at the back, everything else goes in the middle. If you've got a lot of space, just make a whole bunch of combustors, because combustors are really good like that. Or actually, no, you want to use a lot of compressors, because that increases the thrust without making you burn more materials, which is very handy. So yeah, it's just custom jets are your best friend, and in particular, we're here in beta test to talk about a particular component, and that is... damn it. That is this. That is this wonderful thing right here, which is the generator. Jet generators, in case you do not know, are a relatively recent addition to the beta test and from the depths in general. Again, if you are a future person, just substitute the word beta test with from the depths, which means I said from the depths just a little bit earlier. But this is handy because it just uses a percentage of the thrust used in a custom jet and generates power. So this is not generating much power, it's only generating 50 power. And this one over here also generating 50, but that's enough. If most of the power requirements of an aeroplane is the forward thrust, and once that's taken care of, there's not much energy requirements, especially now with the new update, which means you don't need engine power to run ammo processes, which is quite handy. So whatever power is on this, it's only got 100 power, and it is using to power these decoys back here, which is super handy dandy. And yeah, that's basically it, because remember, the pitch control and the roll control and the altitude is all pretty much not costing any engine power at all. Handy things, being a plane. So yeah, that's basically some of the hot tips. Now, we are just going to quickly build a plane from scratch and put all the principles I've just talked about into work. So, we're going to start here, and we're going to start with an AI. We're going to go here, AI, and we're going to go here, and we're going to go target prioritization, and we're going to have one general purpose processing card, and that's all we need actually. And then we're going to have this. And building small planes, you really do have to build from the inside out. So we're going to just, this is going to be a mine dropper, so we're just going to do this. And small launcher, this is going to be like a teeny tiny mine dropper. So here, we got a magnet, and we got explosive warheads. This is going to be absolutely pathetic damage. This is more for the, what do you call it? It's more for demonstration purposes than anything else. So we've got that, we need ammunition, so we're going to stick an ammo box back here. Estimate weapons require a maximum of 24 materials per minute. That's plenty. In fact, we can go one more smaller. So yeah, that's good. We got everything we want. And we can do this. We just need a rudimentary thing to do that. And we are going to armor this a little bit, just so we can be sure it won't die immediately. So we got that. So this thing goes for the things that is very slow. That is low and fat. Okay. Cool. And what else are we missing? We need power, but we're first going to do this. Very small plane. Very, very small. Dupe and dupe and dupe. And just going to plug that hole. And we're going to do this. And we're going to do that. And we're going to remove that because time for custom jet. Boop, and custom jet, really... Oh, wait, no, we need fuel. We need fuel! BorderWise, you need fuel! We're gonna stick a one fuel, boop, there. And we're not gonna have huge custom jets, I don't think, because we probably don't need that. This is probably also... This is probably gonna be overkill. Small intake, and it's gonna be like... So... And... Exhaust goes back there, build that in the middle. Buster. Controller. Skip on the generator because we don't even need it. There. Compressor, small extra compressor. Very handy, very handy. That is a controller, don't need that. Combustion. Combustion chamber, fuel injector, we do need that. And jet exhaust, and that will do pig. That will do. So we've already got pretty much everything we need. So fuel says, estimate you need a maximum of 42 materials per minute for fuel engines and custom jet engines, so we're good. Handy, this is turning into a handy guide for how to build in the beta test, actually, as well, which is convenient. I swear I didn't plan that. So we've got all this, and I just realized we need to do this now. Small entry. Aha! We just found an excuse for bigger bombs. Let's see here. Is that still good? Yes, it's still good. We're gonna stick an ejector right here on the front because that's a good idea. Magnet, and the rest is just... It's gonna stick a few regulators right there. Explosive warhead, explosive warhead, explosive warhead, and explosive warhead. Didn't need to do that. Not sure why I did that. Okay, so we've got all that stuff, and now we need a yaw and pitch control, which is fairly easy. Hopefully this actually goes the way I want it to. So I prefer to separate these things out. Tailplanes are good for both pitch and yaw control. I prefer to separate them out. You don't have to do that. You can do something else. I don't mind. I am not the boss of you, despite what people might tell you. There we go. There we go. Ducts are your best friends for armoring up bits and bobs here and there. And as for decoration, this is a handy way to cover up those inconvenient-looking holes. Okay, cool. This is looking very, very nice already. Apart from that little radar sticking out there, but shush, no one saw that. So, by the way, if you're not making anything this small, it is best not to stick all your vital components so close to each other like this, because that's not a good idea. And I think I do want to do... Also, lots of slopes. Slopes go on the front. Long slopes, as long as you can manage. And if you can't manage, oh dear. Okay, so let's do this. Let's do this. Let's have transition 1 to 2. That's not what I wanted. Cool. That's lovely. Lovely, I say. Okay, so now we need ailerons. But first we need to fix this hole. Alloy blade goes here. So, find the center of mass. Okay, so our thrust is aligned along the center of mass. That's lovely. Now we must change that. Must change it. Changes. Doop. Okay. Right. A lot of jiggery pokery around here. And I apologize. But it's essential. You'll see. Okay. You'll notice there's no wings on this thing because it does not need them. Did I remember this? Yes, I did. Okay. Range bracket, let's say 300. And now we need to go in here and we need to pick a thing. Bombing run and aerial bombing are quite similar. I've used both and they both work pretty well. Aerial bombing works, I quite like... Yeah, it's like they both do very similar things, really. Bombing run is better for dive bombers. Aerial bombing is better for things that are not dive bombers. So we're gonna do cruising altitude that, fly over height is 150. We're gonna do that. And pick a maneuver, airplane and plane. Generally, you want airplane movement because that's more reliable. Pitch towards target point. Let's now unfreeze this fella. Let's actually do this first. Let's go here. 170, 170. Max altitude, we want 190 perhaps. High prediction down to full. Let's see if we're winning. We are winning! Look at that! I forgot to put a chair on this thing. Thankfully, I have a chair prefab, but I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna do this instead. And fire control computer. And vehicle controller. Excellent. So what are we doing? We are now flying along quite merrily. At 100 meters a second, guys, we have a functional plane. Let's test it. I just remembered that I forgot to do... Let's test it on the Marauder. And we need to adjust the magnets. There we go, magnets away. I call that a success. Start time, 3 seconds, maximum range. Thank you, thank you. We just made a little plane! Look at that little guy. It's a tiny, tiny, tiny little plane. Look at that. Look at that thing. Yes. Eat that, Marauder. Alright, so this is an example... Jesus, that's cheap. 3,000 materials. So here's an example of a little plane with custom jets. And all that stuff. It's very, very cheap. It flies perfectly well, flies perfectly fast. And you too can do this. And now, here is probably another disclaimer for you, lovely people, is that I mentioned at the beginning that this wasn't going to be a guide on how to build a perfect plane or even necessarily a good one. That is because there is many, many, many ways to do that, and you don't have to do everything I suggested here. It's just this is the kind of stuff that I've found works for me, because I am not a natural plane enthusiast or plane expert, and this is the stuff I found that has worked. And there's other things you can do. You can, you don't have to use custom jets. You can use the regular jets. You don't have to, you can mount guns on your craft. In fact, there is a plane. I've done that, and I will spawn it in right now, and hopefully it still works. Hello, love. You're still here. So here is an example of a thing I made ages ago that actually uses a broadside to attack, like AC-130 style. It's pretty good. And I'm not sure if it still works. It's still got that kind of sine wave up and down movement. I have no idea if these guns still work. Hopefully they do. They do. So yeah. Planes. Planes are actually alright. You know what? They are alright. I like them. So hopefully all you lovely people found this helpful. Planes, like, I'm gonna straight up say, planes can be one of the most frustrating things in this game to get right and actually to manage. Is there thing AI dead? No, it isn't. But if you do manage it, they can be a lot of fun, and it can be tremendously satisfying just to have a squadron of little bombers or little fighters just go to town on enemy craft. It's just so fun. Wait, no, the other thing. This little guy. I love this little guy. Someone time how long it took to make this thing, because this thing makes me so happy. It's so tiny and stupid. It looks like it's staring at me. Oh, that's adorable. That's so adorable. Could use wedges, though. Let's stick a wedge on it. Let's stick a wedge on it so it looks like it has a nose. Ta-da! No, wait. Ta-da! It's got a nose! It's Nosy Pete. Oh, I love it. Oh, I love it so much. I am going to stop looking at it because I know that'll make people sick. Alright, so that is a basic plane tutorial, and I hope you found it helpful, and I hope you found it entertaining. And thank you all so much for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. Support me on Patreon if you like. It really helps. Thank you to all my current Patreon supporters, and I will see you next time in From the Depths. Farewell.